Alright, we're back on the CB550 today. What I'm doing is I got brand new pistons. They're standard. And what I'm doing now is I'm fitting the rings to make sure that the end gaps are right. Because if you don't do that, there's a very real possibility that the gaps will come together under the heat of compression and combustion, and that will end up lifting up on the grooves here on the piston and breaking the pistons. So we don't want to do that because these pistons were quite expensive. They're OEM factory standard Honda 1975 CB550 pistons, so they're not easy to find, and they're not cheap. So anyway, what we did is, just because they're new doesn't mean you shouldn't measure them. So I went and I measured all the pistons. They measured out exactly the same, all four. So that, big thumbs up. That tells me that the machinist, whoever that was, knew how to calibrate his machine, knew how to measure, and did it right. So what I do then is I take the sizes of the bores that I previously measured, and I try and take the pistons and move them around so that they fit best in whatever hole based on the measurements. So that's what I've done here. Is I went and it's probably upside down, but I've labeled them 1, 2, 3, 4. In actuality, the correct one is 1, 2, 3, 4. You go from the left to the right. But anyway, just for the sake of my workbench here, which is a kitchen table today, I've decided to do it this way, and it seems to work out. So what you do basically is you've got a specification. Piston ring end gap. This particular engine, the top ring is supposed to be 0.15 to 0.35 millimeter, which is 5 to 13 thou. The top and second rings are supposed to be the same. So when your rings come, they come in a little package like foil like this. They come out like a big pile. And in order to tell what is what, basically you know that that is the scraper ring, so that's the bottom one. These are the two small scraper rings that hold the main scraper in place, so that's on the bottom. The second ring on the Honda is generally the ductile iron ring, which is a thicker ring than the top one. The top one has a little, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but here's the top ring. It's got a little gap all the way around the ring, and that's to help build compression. So anyway, the ductile iron ring, if you flip it over, you'll notice that there's a little R right here. I'm going to try and bring this into the camera, but if the light's poor, you probably won't see it. But anyway, there's a little R. That is the top you want to put up. If you ever get piston rings and you're not sure which way they go, if they have numbers or letters on them, they point up. So anyway, to figure out what the end gap is, you take the ring, use your fingers and squeeze it into the bore. Then you take a piston, brand new piston, and you use it to center the ring. So you just push it down there until you're centered in the hole. Then you take your handy dandy feeler gauge and you stick the feeler gauge in the end of the gap. And what you're after is not a tight fit, but you're after a snug fit. So you want just a hair of resistance. You don't want a lot of resistance, but you want a little bit, and that's what I'm getting here. So I'm getting, on the first step, this is a stepped feeler gauge, which means that there's a measurement here and then there's a bigger measurement here. So on the first one, which is 9 thou, I can stick it in there and it's just really easy. But the second step on this is 11 thou. And 11 thou, there's a little tiny bit of clearance there, like drag, so I know that that's correct. So the book says it can be from 5 to 13, so 11 thou is right in the spec. So that's the second ring. We'll put it in order on the table so that when I put it on the piston. Now we'll put the first ring down in there. Just get it squared up as best you can with your hands, and then, like I said, use the piston, push it down there. Get it where she's got to go. Right about there is good. And we'll take the feeler gauge and stick it in there again. Same deal. 9 thou. Stick it on there. She's a little bit loose. There's not much resistance. But when you go to the second step, which is 11 thou, see how my hand is just barely. So that's perfect. So the ring end gaps are ideal. and just pull them out. Be careful with these rings. You can break them, especially the second ductile iron ring. They tend to snap sometimes, and they're very expensive, so be very careful with them. Now, I want to introduce you to my friend. It's called Piston Ring Installation Tool. I know a lot of guys, especially with bigger pistons on Fords and like Chevys and Dodges and stuff, car automotive pistons, that they fit the rings by hand. And now if you're real careful and you've done it before, go for it. But I highly recommend you go down and pay the 18 bucks or whatever it is for this tool. And I'll show you how it works. You take the end of the gap. There's a set of jaws here. You just put the ring in the jaws, just like so. Okay. And then when you squeeze the handle, it'll open the ring. Opens and closes it. Now the thing is if you're not careful and you actually bend one of these rings, well, you're not going to have the springy compression that you need in order to make a good tight seal in here. And if you're losing compression through your rings, you might as well not even bother, in my opinion, building it, because you're losing power. The idea is to make this engine run as good as it did come from the factory or better, in my opinion. So anyway, all you do is you just take the ring. You can always stagger these later. I'm not going to actually put it on the piston, but I'll just show you what you do. You just put it over the end like that, and you pull the handle open until it expands, and then you slip it down where it's got to go into whatever groove it has to fit into. So, and with these oil rings, I just want to touch on this briefly. There's a gap at the end of this ring right here. They should butt up against each other, but they should never overlap. Like that's overlapped. You want it just to butt up. And you want to stagger your gaps. So you put this gap, say at the back, put the gap over here, put a gap over here. Your top rings, put them 120 or 160 degrees apart. You don't want them all to line up, all the gaps. So anyway, that's what we're doing today. I'll just give you an idea of what new pistons will do for your engine job. When I first measured these, the old pistons that I had, some of them were at 58.39. There's 2 or 3 of them here. Well, the service limit, which means the limit at which Honda says replace them, is 58.35. So they're getting awfully, awfully close. So I didn't want to use those. And when I did my piston to cylinder clearance down here, I saw that they're all at right around 4 thou. This one's at 3.9, which is 4 thou. 4 thou, 4 thou, 4 thou, 4 thou. Well, the book says 1.5 thou to 3 thou maximum. 4 thou is too loose. There's no point putting old worn out pistons in a cylinder unless you want to just run the engine for like a year and then redo it again. This way I'm giving him maximum life out of the cylinder and set of pistons. Now with the new pistons, I measured all 4 of them. The piston to cylinder clearance is 2 thou. So that's right in the middle of 1.5 and 3. So that's perfect. That's ideal. And when I build engines, I generally like to put stuff like roughly in the middle of the spec. That's just the way I like to do it. I like to get it as close to the middle as possible. Now, if it's an engine for me and I know how to run an air-cooled engine without seizing it or overheating it, I'll run the spec as tight as possible because I want that thing to last maximum. But if it's for a customer that I know is going to beat the crap out of it, he's going to overheat the thing, he's not going to let it warm up right, he's going to just whack on it all the time, I'll put it towards the looser side of the spec just so that the thing doesn't seize up and there's room for expansion because you need lots of it. But anyway, this is just a continuation. Once these pistons are fitted onto the rods, what I'm going to do then is I'll start assembling the engine, and then I'll have some more videos of that. Right on. Thumbs up for War Amps. Cheers.